Hello everyone, it's Lennon and welcome back to the channel. Thank you, first and foremost, thank you to everyone who participated in the poll that I put out in the community tabs. All three topics will be on the channel someday, okay? Because I guess, I'm thinking about all three of them. I'm thinking about music and using that in spellcraft. I'm thinking about animism. I'm actually thinking about the concept of the isms, mostly animism, because as it says in that poll slot, I'm currently reading a poetry book that's knocking my socks off. So I want to touch on animism, but then how I believe that I'm working with multiple isms actually all at the same time and how that's okay. So I've got some thoughts on the isms and then of course this topic that won the poll. Okay. So we're going to be talking about building your own deity. But Lennon, you always talk about working with deity as an abstraction. You're right. I do. And that's because of my isms. So I kind of want to say that in the concept that we're going to be talking about today, building your own deity, I'm using deity as an umbrella term because depending on your ism, if you have one, the deity would fall under multiple categories of how and how you would work with them, how you see them in terms of a worldview, in terms whether or not you believe in source and whether the deities are manifestations of source or whether it's all the same thing. It really depends on your ism. Like I said, if you have one, if you have more of a secular view, to be honest, I believe that deity could go into the secular realm if you wanted it to, for those atheists, for my atheist spiritualists out there. But anyways, I digress. So just keep in mind that deity right now, for the purpose of this video, is going to be like kind of an umbrella term. My thoughts on deity are, like I said, abstract. I believe them to be archetypes, which just basically means that I consider deities that I would want to work with as mirrors to me. Like I'm going to be naturally drawn to certain creatures, characters, and gods or goddesses throughout myth and history because they have something in them that is pulling me, and it's probably because there's something in me there's a link there. I also believe that because I believe them to be archetypal, I believe all the major archetypes live on what I call the web of life. So you'd be able to find the majority of these of the archetypes on the web of life, and therefore that's why I believe you can see them in multiple pantheons, like, goddess of love here. But that's not throwing shade on anyone who believes in a different type of deity work. Like if you believe Aphrodite is not the same as the goddess of love over here, Who am I to say? I don't know. That's how my worldview ropes into my belief system and belief structure, the paradigms in which I use them, the isms in which I use them, and of course, what's pulling me in terms of archetype. So that's my views. But what is this video not? Okay? This video is not gonna tell you your why. There's been loads of videos across YouTube about deity and how to work with them, how to stay connected to them. I mean, Kellyanne's got like a whole playlist. There's so many rich ways people have come to the topic of working with deity, but we're not really gonna go there today. We're building them from the ground up. And I'm really, really excited about the concept, and I really hope it goes over well, because I did kind of try it out myself, and it's really fun. So it's gonna be kind of like a game. Like I believe that this kind of fun we can come at deity with this kind of fun. We don't have to be like all serious all the time. So okay, so let's get right into it. I let's give you a little backstory as to how this whole build your own deity came about. Okay, so I'm not a stranger to Dungeons and Dragons, okay? Hopefully you guessed that that's where we were gonna go from the thumbnail. But I don't know if you did or not. It's okay if you didn't. You don't have to have a working knowledge of D&D to get what we're gonna do. But essentially, I'm not a stranger to D&D. My son started a D&D club at his school and recently became a DM for one of the groups there. So he's really excited. And my husband, I've known him since I was a teenager, and he's always been a DM. So it just is what it is. I'm not a stranger to the game. But I was vacuuming the other day, and I had a myth. I was thinking about Medea because she's high up there, you guys, high up there for me. So I was thinking about Medea and Jason and the Golden Fleece, okay? And I just had that myth rolling around in my head, and I was vacuuming, and I happened to look down at my son's character sheet. Now, if you don't know what a D&D character sheet is, I will plop it here on the screen for you. Looks complicated. It's not complicated, but it looks complicated. Bam! I had an epiphany. I was like, wow, what if I could add all the things that I'm drawn to in one place and make like a deity knapsack, right? Like a knapsack of all the things that I'm naturally drawn to, and what would that look like? And then it dawned on me that that might be this like egregoric creation of mine that is essentially my deity. It would be my specific deity, right? Like we're going sacrilegious here. We're going heretical. Okay, we're going blasphemous. That however many deities I choose to work with, however many archetypes I choose to work with, however many isms I work with, by putting all of this into one, like kind of one sheet, I can build my own deity. And how fascinating is that? So I made a build your own deity character sheet. And it's just, I don't know, it was so fun to do. I'm going to put it here on the screen. And I wanted to go over the topics here, because I don't know if you'll be able to see this, especially if you're looking on your phone. You're not going to be able to see like what words I put here. So I'm going to go over the sections in which I did this. Now, this will be available to download for free if you want to like print it, or just like have it like download it on your computer. On my Ko-fi page, I will leave the link below. So the purpose of this character sheet, almost kind of like a D&D character sheet, okay? You have a character sheet that's just going to be with you, right? Forever. There's not a lot of paper that's going to be with that character sheet. So unlike D&D, this character sheet that I made is going to be, it's kind of like the same thing. This is like the bullet point stuff, but you need to have like a backstory back here, you know, like notebook paper, flashcards kind of thing back here with your backstory on it, okay? And that's kind of what I'm going with today. So I've got my trusty composition notebook with me because it doesn't leave me, really. Okay. And here are basically what this PDF thing that I made, okay, the sheet that I made does, in my opinion, is it kind of goes over the umbrella ways in which you would want to work with a deity, build a deity, and who the deity is as an archetype or as a character in myth or whatever. And I kind of want to stress that when we're building our own deity here, imagination is also valid. We're not getting into the dialogue of what is real and not real. That dialogue needs to die. It's going to die a death right here in this video. Right here. Okay? Dead. So if you're imagining, if you're, using your imagination and you're traveling, you're path working, hedge riding, whatever, with all these things, put it there, put it down, So you're gonna need something to write with when looking over this sheet. That's just how I do it. But you could video yourself going through these prompts. You could basically, I guess I consider these prompts, prompts for you to explore deity in other ways and explore what you're drawn to and how it all kind of goes into the knapsack of what you want in a deity and how that's going to benefit you in the long run. How building your own from the ground up or from an existing one that you already work with, we'll get there, is going to benefit you in the long run in your practice. So, okay, first we're going to give our deity a name. Now, it may already have one. Say you work with Aphrodite, okay? You can write Aphrodite. You can also make up one on the fly, okay? Make something up. Or go through several variations of names that you love, These could just be nicknames. Do you have a nickname for Aphrodite that you use to talk to her? Stuff like that, right? Now over to the side of name, we have domain and appearance. Domain is exactly what it says, okay? This is like, to me, domain is like their kingdom. So where they reside. If they're not, if they're not like omnipresent, okay? If they have a realm. So say Hades, right? Like Tartarus looks like this, blank, right? Really, to me, I believe that the more detail we put into practices like this, the more we find out about ourselves. Because say, for instance, you are working or want to work with Hades, you write Tartarus in domain, you have this whole thing about Tartarus and looking like this, looking like this, looking like this. So domain is really where this deity is is their kingdom. But it is not necessarily going into realm yet, like the realm, right? Like the entire realm of Hades would be underworld. We'll get there, okay? The domain, though, is like, for me, his domain would be like his throne room or the castle that he lives in, right? Or the cave, like whatever. This is something kind of a little bit more specific than underworld. So, but we're going to get to that aspect in a minute. But we can try to get into detail about where these people would live if they lived, kind of in an anthropomorphized kind of a way, like we're anthropomorphizing these beings, whether or not they live on our plane of existence or not. Okay, I guess we're trying to conceptualize ways in which they would live, even in a supernatural way, if we wanted to go that route. Okay, don't have to. And then appearance is something that you may or may not be interested in as well. I believe there's a lot to be said about glamour magic. So when we put features or how in which they dress, do they dress like their culture? Do they dress like their time period? And you don't really want to modernize. But say you work with, again, we'll keep with the Hades. We'll keep with the Hades example. Maybe instead of going the Greek way with the pantheon and how he would be this toga wearing, horned guy or whatever you want to put on him, what if you wanted to modernize him? Then appearance would be relevant here. And there's a lot to be said about anything you want to do here, but I think that it would tell us things about working with our deities as to how we want them to present themselves, how they are presenting themselves to us. When we see them in our mind's eye, what does that say about us? That we're more, that if we want to keep with the time period, keep with the culture, or do we want to modernize them, make them kind of this, modern version of themselves, So I think, or a blending of the two. So I think appearance has its place, but again, you could just write a big old X there and just say this is just a floating figure here, you know? Now we're going to get, when we go down, I put 3, I'll call them categories of realms in which your deity could reside, live, be in reference to. Now, I want to stress before, just real fast, that whether or not you're coming at this exercise with a pre-existing deity like Hecate, like Hades, or making one up of the fly, I think that if we explore all the aspects of this thing that we're making up on the fly here, there will be things from stories, myths, video games, all kinds of things can go into this. It doesn't have to have a set pantheon, set myth, set realm. We're really making it up off the fly. But in order to kind of see, in order to kind of see what the deity would look like as this big egregore kind of a thing that we're building here, to me, it's nice to bullet point, right? All these things. And then we can expand on those bullet points. But what the bullet points tell us is where we tend to go, right? Where we tend to have the most, in. So, like I said, for an example, we've got the upper world, earth, and we've got the underworld as these 3 kind of characterized realms here. Now, the upper world is heaven. Okay, does this deity we're building have this kind of a ethereal, harps playing, pearly gates kind of a thing, right, happening? Rainbows. This could be as vague or specific as you want to go with it. But for me, upper world, earth, and underworld have characteristics that are present, okay, archetypally. Like the underworld is abysmal, right? Maybe it's fire and brimstone for you. Maybe it's just caves, right? It's undergrowth, underbelly, right, of a realm. But earth is like tangible reality, what we can see, smell, taste, using our 5 senses, things like that. Really immerse yourself into all these, but then also the attributes and characteristics of these realms, and then find ones that you're automatically drawn to, right? Really, I guess these characteristics could go off aesthetics. What aesthetics are you drawn to? Simple as that. Okay, because we're really not going into the specific specificity of the domain, and we're not really going into symbols, right? Like skulls and death or whatever. We're not really going into there yet. It's more aesthetics, right? These are color schemes. These are, the 5 senses, right? We're delving into the 5 senses here. What are the smells that you're drawn to? Like, are you more earthy, musky, right? Things like that. So it's mostly just aesthetics in these 3 realms, and then by diving into each one or one over the others, you'll find what you're most drawn to in terms of a realm. Okay, so then off to the other side, we have benevolence, liminality, and malevolence. My husband would stress here, he doesn't necessarily believe in lawful neutral. Okay, if you're familiar with D&D terms. He doesn't think that that's the thing. But to me, liminality has its place. This is a very neutral grounds here. But say you have a pre-existing deity, and in their myth story, or in any story, okay, pop culture story, whatever kind of story we're talking about here, or that you're making up, there may be some things that this deity does that would be considered wholly good, charity, right? Things like that. Do they give often? Are they selfless, right? Are they full of love? Are they full of benevolence? But then malevolence, is there any evil connotations that you associate with the deity? Not necessarily that they're evil to you, okay, but things that are considered evil, like these destruction aspects. Not necessarily that I don't believe that destruction is bad, but we would probably put that in malevolence, right? This is kind of left-hand path things in malevolent side to me. Only, again, aesthetically. And then liminality is something in between. Do you believe in the in-between? Do you believe in in-between states? Do you believe in in-between realms? Do you believe in in-between creatures and things like that? There's, like, liminality is kind of going off of, and we'll get there. But this is like it's kind of like the personality of the deity, but it's mostly on what you are drawn to. What are you drawn to? One or more of these. When you think of benevolence, which acts of benevolence are you most drawn to? What are your love languages? What are your thoughts in terms of fertility? What are your thoughts in terms of protection, right? Things like that. These are just, and whether or not you consider any of the things you would put here wholly good, wholly evil, or somewhere in the middle. Okay, then we're going to go down. Now I have 3 sections kind of underneath the realm section that are a little bit smaller. Okay, one is contact. How are you contacting this deity? Are you contacting this deity? Are you using chants? Are you using prayers? Are you using beads? Are you using poetry? Are you using art? Like, this is ways in which you have conversation with this deity. Now, let's say that your pre-existing deity, okay, has forms in which they like to be contacted. You could write that here. But let's just say, if you're not drawn to chanting, then whether or not this deity that you work with wants or likes chanting, if you're not drawn to chanting, I don't believe that there's going to be much power behind that when you go to do these workings. It's just my opinion. I think that we are naturally drawn to forms of communication, whether relationships that are in our earthly realm, like say with partners, family, things like friends, things like that. But then even with our deity, that we'll be drawn to types of communication. And I believe that those are what we need to explore. How do you like to communicate with people? Do you like to talk to them on the phone? Do you like to talk to them through letters? Do you like to write letters? I do believe that there could be some like mixtures here between people that you associate with in everyday life and then your deity as well. You'll be naturally drawn to forms of contact. And I believe that's worth exploring. Okay, next is symbols. It is what it says. Symbols you're naturally drawn to. Again, these could be pre-existing symbols of your deity, like apples, or like skulls, or like actual symbols, like a triquetra, like that. That's one of mine. But these are just symbols that you're drawn to, right? Now, let's just say here, I could get out my signs and symbols book back here and give you 100 symbols that I like, okay? But really, when we're trying to dive into deity and building our own, the symbols here that would have to be here in this section would be the ones that are like your go-to, your ride or die symbols, the ones you always go back to. For me, that's the pomegranate, that's the skull. I'm like looking at my skulls on my mantle because I just love them so much. Skulls, moons, stars, the key, things like that. Yeah, I'll just give those. Those are just good examples, right? Those are symbols that I've been drawn to since I was a child. And I believe that those are the ones that if they're that strong, if these symbols are that strong for you, that holds magic. And I believe that you could use these symbols in forms with deity. So it'll be the ones that you're naturally drawn to, but then also your ride or die, the ones that you're never going to like fall out of love with. And again, it may sound weird that we're going off of, because when I was explaining this like thing to my husband, because he was excited I was using D&D as a reference, he was like, well, why don't you just write Lennon at the name? Because this seems like all the stuff you like, not that your deity likes. And I was like, but that's the rub. When we're building our own deity, and especially if you kind of go off of this like your deities are mirrors of you and your soul, and you want to get to know yourself and know your soul, we still have to dive, we still have to dive with that. And so whether or not this deity has a pre-existing story over here in myth, you can still build on that. You're drawn to these symbols because, this is a symbol of this deity because, things like that. And then the next one is offering. Again, this could be one of those, like appearance, you could just draw a big on X on. If you're not called, and if you're not drawn to perform offerings in in deity work, then that's not necessarily going to have any magic when it goes to doing workings and trying to put your intentions across. But there may be, and these could again be simple things like contact. These could be poetry, devotion work, right? This is ways in which we're offering something of ourselves to our deities. This could be art, right? The art we do for our deity. We can offer anything. And this could be things we burn, things we get rid of, right? I could draw a little, stick figure thing for my deity just to get it out of my head because I'm thinking about it so hard. And it could be like a stick figure drawing, and then I burn that damn thing in the cauldron. That's powerful because I put that power behind it. I put that intention behind it. So these are just ways in which you naturally want to offer the goods that you have. Because I think that's important, using the skills and the gifts we already have. I think that's what's going to back your things with magic. So anyway, so then off to that side, we have another section. We have power/skill. There are two different things to me. Powers are powers, okay? These are supernatural powers, okay? If we're saying that this is elemental power, right? That this deity has control over the elements, control over storms, control over thunder and lightning. And they use it how? This is how they use it, right? But then skill is a little different, okay? So say skills to me could be what your deity does that they're good at. Like say, take Artemis, for example. Archery would be one of her skills, right? For Loki, right? He has powers, right? He has supernatural powers, okay? But in terms of a skill, Loki's skill would be managing mischief, okay? Because he can enact mischief, but then he has to kind of manage that. So managing mischief would be a definite skill of Loki. Kind of linking at the bottom here, we're kind of linking power and skill with hobbies, okay? Because again, I think Artemis' hobby would be hunting. But then a skill of hers kind of mirrors that with her skill being archery, and then also a skill of Artemis's would be animal allegiance. So they can all kind of hobbies and like crafts and trades of your deity could go on what their skills and powers are, whether or not you give them supernatural powers or have them pre-existing. And then we have personality traits, okay? Is what it says, okay? Who is this deity? Are you really anthropomorphizing this deity, right? Are you giving them human characteristics? I still believe we could do this, like give our deities personalities, like Zeus. He a man whore. That's what I would write. You know? Or charisma, right? He's got some charisma. But at the same time, we can do this. Let's say I put charisma, or I put punctual, or I put pride. Like they have a lot of pride. They're prideful. Or are they shy? Right? So these are personality traits we could put on them, but you can still think of them as deities instead of humans. So these are just simple. These could be simple traits that you give your deity that you notice about your deity. That's it. And then, like I said, we kind of touched on hobbies, but that's, again, is what it says. Do you have hobbies that you're drawn to? Maybe you have a hobby that you've always wanted to try, but you never have. This could be something that you associate with a deity to put your foot in the door, right? So hobbies. Are they a blacksmith? Right? Do they like to race cars? Do they like to garden? Because I believe gardening could be here in the hobbies. But then I also, again, linking back up to power and skill, I believe that gardening could be a hobby, but their skill could be herb craft. You know, how we're linking it all together. And then eventually you've got this big old web of this deity sheet, and you're like, wow, here's the common things. Here's what I'm drawn to the most. And then we've got this big ass deity that we've got this big deity here, and we're starting to notice things about what we're drawn to. So, okay. And then we have 3 little boxes down here that says pop culture, models of magic, and rebirth and fate. Now, pop culture is what it says. Are you drawn to things in pop culture? Are you, like for me, mine, I've always been interested in the Labyrinth movie, Tim Curry's Lord of Darkness from the Legend. He's been a lover of mine for since I was about 4 years old. Okay. I was really young watching that movie. So Labyrinth, Dark Crystal, Skyrim. Skyrim was, let's just say Skyrim is the best video game ever, and don't at me because you've got no case. So there will be aspects of that game that I would pull in here in pop culture. You have comic books, movies, television shows. The list is endless. You have toys, right? Are you drawn to Barbies? Like specific type of toys. Are you drawn to Legos? Books, book characters. It is what it says. Things you're drawn to from pop culture. You know, books, movies, TV, comic books, video games, whatever. Whatever pop culture is, there will be things that you keep thinking about, right? Like, for instance, me. Female pirates. They're a thing for me. They have to have a place on this because of how much I think about them. Because of how much how much energy I place on thinking about female pirates. It has to have a place on this list. And then how much I think about the movie Labyrinth, how much I think about the Lord of Darkness from Legend, how much I think about the video game Skyrim, how much I think about all my book characters that I want to remember. That's another huge thing for me too, is things I want to remember. And things I don't think I'll ever forget. Whether or not you're building a deity or using this to build a deity, but then use this also to build like a shrine to this deity, these things can help you as well, going through all these categories here and prompts. Now the next one is models of magic. That's only if you utilize a magical practice, okay? If you believe in magic. Belief is a tool, right? Whether or not you however in which you believe in magic, if you do, I think that we could utilize that here. Again, we can kind of link up to powers here with magic, but we don't have to. Because we're talking about magic, I wanted to place the emphasis on which model it is, because I think that can kind of get us to think too. You know, are we more drawn to the model of the psychological magical model, or the spirit, the energetic model, the information model? The ways in which we emphasize one, multiple, or all of them, the meta model, will show us a little bit more into how we believe in magic. So, just in my opinion. And then we have rebirth and fate. Again, this could be something that doesn't necessarily have to be something associated with your deity, but for me, it had to have a place because, like, say I believe in destiny, I believe in fate, I believe in reincarnation, or this aspect of rebirth. This is where you plug all of that in, okay? Say you have a deity, like a death deity, okay? But there are aspects in some of the stories or some of the things that you make up, or you really want there to be an aspect of rebirth, okay? First of all, there has to be a death for there to be a rebirth, okay? And a reincarnation. There has to be a death. Painful death over here. No, I'm just kidding. There has to be a death. So, you need to, like, map out how in which you would frame rebirth, transformation, spiritual awakening, you know, reawakening, reincarnation, and whether or not you believe fate or destiny plays a role in that. Like whether you believe in, like, you know, prophecy, oracles, things like that. I think that there's this like whole sphere here that we could really dive deep into with what you actually believe. And then when you map those terms out, rebirth, reincarnation, destiny, fate, spiritual awakening, dark night of the soul, those kinds of things that would happen right before a big transformation, we can map out how in which we define those terms and then link that back to this deity that we're building and see if you can find a common thread archetypally. That's why it's there. But if you don't believe in the aspect of rebirth or like death and transformation, just, again, put a big X on that. I do believe that if your sheet was blank, that would tell you something. Okay, and then the last one I put is guardians, servitors, and familiars. Because I believe they have a place. Now you could say that Cerberus would be a symbol of Hades or Persephone or whatever, right? You can say it's a symbol. It can be a symbol, okay? But it's also, I consider Cerberus to be technically a familiar to Hades, right? If you want to if you want to define familiars, this would be the place to do it. Define what you believe a familiar is. Or if you don't think of it as, all the way a familiar, then you can think of more of a guardian, right? It's protecting. So that's something I would work with in terms of, like, this is where I would put animal spirits, animal gods, right? Whatever you would call your companions in your craft, or the companions of this deity that you're working with, or the spirits / entities / animals that you are drawn to the most. This is kind of where I would put those. You love owls. You love the corvid family. Do you love snakes? Also, like, for me, snake would go down here in for me, guardian. But then it would also go into symbols, because I believe snake as a symbol is powerful. But I also believe that in the spiritual model of it, So it can all be linked together. Again, I'll refer back to skill, okay? Power and skill. Your deity may have like maybe over something. Okay. Protection, fertility, death, rebirth, hearth and home, you know, storms, or agriculture, right? They may already have something that they're the god, goddess, godexes of, okay? That could go in power and skill as well. But then also when we're going down to guardians, servitors, and familiars, you can link, like say mine's an ox, right? And I've put some kind of agricultural thing in power skill. Ooh, that's a link, right? And so I'm basically making up this character, deity character sheet, and then doing this like crime thing with this red yarn and linking it all. And I'm learning about myself in the process. That's what this is about. Basically, this sheet is a sheet full of journal prompts as to how you could either build your deity from the ground up, right? And then whether or not you're building this from the ground up, are you utilizing myth and story and pop culture and toys and all kinds of things here to build it, or is it pre-existing and it's already got kind of like a vague kind of a story here that, you know, you've wrote one word in each section, just going off of their story. Build on those, build on that. So it's basically just an exercise in expansion and exploration, and hopefully it's helpful, and hopefully it's fun. So that's what building your deity means to me, is getting out a D&D character sheet and mapping that out. You could do this 100 times. Make up your own pantheon, you know, make up your own pantheon of gods and what they're doing for you, you know, for you, with you, to you. Like I said before, this is a little sheet that you can download for free off my Ko-fi page. The link will be below. I'm also going to leave a link to Kellyanne's deity playlist below because it's epic. You'll find some gold in there with kind of like the how, you know, how in which you can work with deity, things you can do to stay connected, things like that. I think she's made some powerful videos on that subject. But for those of us that are guilty about maybe using different pantheons, like I'm drawn to, you know, I've always been drawn to Hecate, but then I also am drawn to Ereshkigal. And whether or not I think that they're the same person through my ism and through my worldview, culture and time and story have made them separate things, and it's the differences is the reason why I'm drawn to both, right? Something like that. I can explore that through this. You know, make a sheet for Hecate, make a sheet for Ereshkigal, make a sheet for Medea, who is a priestess of Hecate. So it's like, why didn't I just add her into Hecate? I can, you know? What is it about Medea that I'm drawn to that seems separate than Hecate? Because they're linked, right? Explore, right? So it's just about asking questions, paying attention, and finding out how we can have a spiritual practice that will make us feel like we're unfolding, like, you know, like the brick wall in Harry Potter. We're just like unfolding like this, like a Mobius strip of constant changing, ever evolving, ever changing thing. And we want to be able to keep up with it, right? Sometimes we can just ride the waves. Sometimes we can just ride that wave. And then other times we actually want to pay attention to it and find out, wait a minute, this is a different color now. Why is it a different color now? Oh, I'm drawn to roses now. What does that mean? Like, we're ever evolving, ever changing, and we're complex. Therefore, I believe your deity would have to be complex as well. So if you're drawn to this exercise, I believe build the biggest egregoric, blasphemous, heretical thing you can because that big ass thing in the corner over there that you've built will be you in God form. So, okay, I've rambled enough. Let me know if this was helpful. If you download it and everything and you're like journaling about it and thinking about it, let me know how it goes. I think that'll be interesting. And come back for the other topics that were on the poll soon on the channel. Much love.